Welcome to the Lift Your Story podcast with guest Dr. Elijah Nicholas, spiritual light coach. Hi, everyone. I am LaurieAnn. I am that gal from Toronto, Canada, and I'm with.
I am that guy. I am Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas. Welcome to our Lift Your Story podcast.
In this episode, we welcome Dr. Elijah, and he is a spiritual light coach. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning. I really appreciate you all having me on.
Great. Well, before we start, I'd like to thank you for your service.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was indeed my pleasure.
Were you in the Army?
Yes, sir. I started in the Army. I did my first 6 years in the Army. I got smart and I transferred over to the Air Force, and I retired from the Air Force in 2012.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's a pretty long career. So anything interesting happened to you while you were going through that stretch of military?
Nothing much.
Nothing,
Well,
nothing outstanding.
I served actually, Roy, for 24 years, 10 months, and 8 days. But who's counting?
Right.
I was 17 years old, actually, Roy and LaurieAnn, when I joined. And my mom actually had to sign the papers so I could go in, because the entry age at that time was 18 years old. And so I would say probably for me, the most interesting thing that happened is I served my entire time in the military as a lesbian. And I actually didn't think about this until I was working out the other day in the gym and realized that it was the 10-year anniversary of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal. And so that was significant for me because at the time I was living life, obviously, as a woman. And so I stayed in and retired just after the repeal took place. So that's probably the biggest thing that I did, was I made it through.
I was going to ask you, how difficult was that during those years?
Well, when I was going through it, it seemed like it was the hardest time of my life. And when I look back now, it's like I really realized that it really was a testimony and a preparation for everything that I do now. It was challenging, honestly, because it was during a time when women were not serving in many leadership roles at the time in the military. We didn't have I would say, the diversity that we have today in the military. Obviously, there's still, a need for additional diversity and inclusion, but we didn't have that. So it was challenging. However, it was also motivating for me. One of the reasons that I started in the Army was because my test score was not high enough, believe it or not. Nothing against anybody in the Army, but I actually went to the career fair and I went to the Air Force table. And when I told them what my ASVAB score was, which is the test you take to get in the military, they literally pointed to the Army table. And you might want to go down to that table. And so I laugh about it now, but it really became a motivator for me. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to get in the Air Force one day. And so I literally started as a private, O's like E0, literally. I had no rank when I went in. I think I made like $70 a month or something like that, maybe a week. And I retired as a lieutenant colonel. So, I always try to take things that appear to be a challenge for me and turn them so that they have a positive spin on my life and the life of others.
Well, hearing that story just now, now I understand why you have all these degrees that you have.
I just wouldn't stop going to school, and the military paid for a lot of those degrees. So if they're going to pay for it, why not?
Yeah. Well, so you were lieutenant colonel, so you actually made it through the leadership quite well, I would say.
I did. I excelled very, very well in the educational side. The reality is, although I joke about it, the Air Force is really where I was supposed to be. It's where I blossomed, and it was where it really challenged my mind, and whereas the Army challenged my body physically more so, right? And it's because of the mission, which is understandable. But once I found the environment that I could thrive in, education, it just really opened a lot of doors for me. And, as hard as it was, I never let anything, whether it was my race or my gender identity or sex at the time, define, feeling, if you will, for me personally.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes.
Yeah, it
Thank you.
really does. Did you meet a lot of resistance as you were going up in the ranks?
Absolutely. I met a ton of resistance. One of the reasons that I became an officer is because I met a old crusty, and I say this in love, a old crusty warrant officer when I first joined the Army. And I don't remember the exact conversation, but he told me that I would never become an officer. He's like, "Oh, you can't do it. Like you all, like," he probably said something like, "You people." I mean, he was 90 years old at the time, and it was 1987. So he was basically like finishing, he's probably like on his last couple of years of the military. And he said, "Oh, you'll never become an officer." And I kid you not, Roy, the reason that I became an officer just so I could prove him wrong.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't realize at the time how God was literally setting me up, but I did it. Tasha at the time did it because I was like, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna show this guy that I could do it. Of course, when I went back, he probably was. I don't know where he was, but yeah. So he was probably my initial resistance that I had, and that was like when I first joined the military, probably not even a year in.
It's interesting. How people like that can motivate you to do great things. At the time you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it." I'm going to show this guy. I'm going to do this. If it's even out of spite, I'm going to do it.
Absolutely, and it's really when things like that happen to us, we have two choices. We can either accept what people say and believe it, and that becomes our new agreement, as they talk about in the four agreements, right? Or we can not accept it. We can resist that perspective or perception of us, and we can create and tell our narrative of who we are. And that's the road that I decided to take.
What were you, like 17, 18 years old then?
I was, yes, sir.
Okay. So think about this. You're that young, and once that happened to you, you could have just shut down and just nothing for the next 20 or 30 years. Or you can use that to motivate you to get to where you got to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I try to tell any young person that well, we're not just a young person, because the reality is it happens to us at every age, right? But as far as my nieces and nephews and baby cousins, I try to tell them, like, nobody defines you. You define who you are. And actually, even you don't define you, because you don't define you, because who you are today is not who you're going to be tomorrow. And so allow yourself to expand and don't listen to what people say. Take it as a lesson and a stepping stone.
I do have to share this one really fast though, because I have a friend and she just bought a motorcycle, and it's with the little sidecar. It's really cute. And when she went to buy, the guy said, "Oh," he says, "you're never going to be able to ride this. You're not going, because she's 74." And he's saying that,
Wow.
you're too old to learn. And she started feeling down on herself. And I said, "No way, Laura." I said, "Don't let them say otherwise. This is on your bucket list. Don't let them take it off." And now she's riding it around and loving it like there's no tomorrow. So
That is so awesome. Good for her.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story. That's such a testament that to our brains and to who we are. Like, we can do anything we want to do at any age. I really do believe that.
Well, and here's the other thing too, because your story, it means a lot to me because she also was born a man and she went through the military as a male, but she always wanted to be a woman since the time she said she doesn't remember, since she was like 2, 3 years old, she wanted to be. And at the
Wow.
age of 71, she transitioned.
She transitioned at 71.
71, yes,
Wow.
yes,
Please tell her I said congratulations. Good for her.
yeah.
That wow, that makes me feel good because I always felt like I transitioned later in life, right? And so to hear that 71 years old, that just makes you just totally made my day.
Yeah, so
Like
she's
that
quite
made
something. 71, she transitioned. 74, she got a motorcycle. So there you go. It's
good
never
for
too
her.
late.
Living life unapologetically. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So, great
So,
story.
you know, how many people have you inspired, do you think?
Oh, I have no idea.
Well, how many have any of them come up to you and said, hey, because of you, I did this?
Absolutely. I have actually. And my very first book that I wrote, Didn't Ask, Didn't Tell, The Life of a Gay Christian Soldier. It's still floating out there. I took it off of distribution for some personal family legal reasons. And but it's still floating out there in places. And every now and then I'll get an email from someone telling me that they read that book and how much it changed their life. With my children's book now, I get messages from parents, from families, from siblings, from people who are transitioning, or from people who aren't able to transition, but they're able to experience life through the eyes of Madison, the character in my book, Bedoodle. So, it would be arrogant to say that I've impacted millions, but I do really believe. I believe in the Bible where it says in Matthew, I believe it's 28 and 19, where Jesus talks about going out to make disciples in the earth. I believe that that is really my mission. That's a part of my mission. And so every conversation that I have, every single interaction, every engagement that I have, it's my objective to spread light and to spread the love of Jesus, to spread the love of all of the faiths that we encounter, that we have, that we practice. And so I say that it may sound arrogant to say that I've impacted millions, but really it's not me. I would say that God has impacted so many lives through me, um, countless lives. I really don't know because one person has a conversation with another person, another person, another person. And that's really how that's how this freedom journey works. We free one person and then they have a conversation with someone else and they free another person and it kind of flows like a river.
Yeah, but it's got to be a great feeling when somebody sends you a message or calls you or talks to you and says, "Oh, thank you so much. Because of
Absolutely.
you, this happened."
Absolutely, especially on the down day, Roy. On one of those days where I'm not feeling so chipper, it's like those messages always come, right on time. And it's like, okay, thank you, God. I am moving in the right direction. I am doing what I'm supposed to do. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us a little about your ministry.
So I have Dr. Elijah Nicholas Ministries. It was Kingdom International Ministries virtual church is how it started in 2014. And it was a virtual ministry, which is so interesting because now virtual ministry is the way to go. We started it in 2014 and we had ministries here in the US and in Africa. And basically what we did was spread the love of Christ, period, to anybody who would listen. And we didn't spread the laws of the Bible. We spread the love of Christ. And because personally, I think there is a difference. right? And so we would just love on anybody and everybody that we could. And so for me in 2017, I began to transition and my mind began to expand. My consciousness began to expand beyond Christianity. Christianity is still my foundational faith. But I began to realize, understand, and more importantly, accept that there were more truths and more ways to God or ways to Yahweh than just Christianity. And so I shut the ministry down. It was also when I was going through my gender transition. I shut the ministry down and went through an unfortunate divorce. And then about 2 years ago, I began, the ministry was always active, but it wasn't public. So I changed the name to Dr. Elijah Nicholas Ministries. And I did that because everything that I do for me is ministry. Writing is ministry, speaking is ministry, doing this podcast is ministry. And so that's what I do. My goal, my mission in life is to illuminate love and light around the world. And that is the foundation of the ministry.
Wow. That's pretty good.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, in your search, we'll call it search, okay? You know, and you're talking about other religions and other ways, you know, did anything come out that really struck you, that really made a really impact on you?
Well, you know, one of the things, that's a really good question. One of the things that has recently made a huge impact on me is one of the Buddha principles about surrendering and the importance of surrendering. Like I read that principle years ago and I didn't really understand it. I was like, I really don't get it. Like I hear it, but I don't get it. And it wasn't, believe it or not, until about 2 months ago when one of my dogs passed. I had two boxers. I have one still. You may see him come through here at any point. So my dog passed and I was really close. His name was Zeus. His name is Zeus. And I was really close to him, like closer than any relationship I've ever had. Closer. It was a bond that I really couldn't understand. And he was sick for about probably 6 months, but probably about 3 months when I began to accept it. And, pardon me, sorry about that. And it wasn't until I really began to surrender the fact that he was going to transition and surrendering, like giving God complete, total control in that situation. And that's when I really had a paradigm shift, if you will. And I was reading a book by Marianne Williamson, and she talks about a miracle being the shift in our perspective. And so I had a shift in my perspective about Zeus because I always felt like I'm not God. Who am I to take his life? Who am I to, to put him down, if you will, at the vet? And when I realized that surrendering was the best thing that I could do in that situation, and I always told my doctors, whenever you're ready to go, just let me know. I will fight until, we have no fight left. And I remember the morning where he didn't want to go to the vet. He was like, I'm over it. I'm not getting any more shots. I'm not taking another pill. Like, I'm done. And so I asked him in that moment, I said, you're ready, right? And he just like spiritually in thought let me know that he was ready. And that is when I began to really understand the principle of surrendering and once how much control we have over surrendering and how that surrendering really stops the pain. Like we have control over how much pain we experience at any given moment. And it's all about surrendering. And when you think about the relationship to other faiths in Christianity, for me, that's what Christ did at the cross. He totally surrendered, right? And so that I think I know has been the most impactful principle on me as of late. And had I not expanded beyond Christianity and beyond the dogma, if you will, of religion, I may not have had that experience.
It's interesting you mentioned surrendering because we've had some guests on and we've heard that quite a bit. And it's interesting because that everybody always says, once I was able to surrender,
Yes.
everything changed. You know, and they talk about, having to get to that point to where they could surrender. And once
Yes,
they did, total difference in their life.
absolutely.
And that's a
Totally.
really good story, but you have me all teary-eyed because my dog is 12
Oh,
years old and I'm sitting there going, I know that I only have a little bit more time with him. I try not to think about it, but those moments happen. And like you said, this dog, and when he's a little puppy, he came straight to me and he's never left my side. He won't go
ever.
anywhere without me. So I get that. So thank you for sharing, although yes, I am teary-eyed right now. So
You're welcome. And guess what, LaurieAnn? He will never leave your side. Even when he transitioned to the spirit. My Zeus, I have to tell you, when I have been meditating sometimes, I will literally feel Zeus lick my knee like he used to do. One time I felt it on the balcony and I thought it was my other dog. And I opened my eyes from meditation and I look up and Duke is literally in the other room. And so I can promise you, I don't know your baby's name, but your baby will never leave your side.
that's good to hear.
Mhm.
Rolly is his name. He was Roly
Roll.
Poly, but then he lost all that weight. So now he's just Roly.
Okay. Rolly. I could take some lessons from Rolly, right? Thank you for sharing that, LaurieAnn.
Well, thank
Well, now, Dr. Elijah, you said you've got several books. Can you just tell us a little bit about your books?
Absolutely, I will. So I'll tell you about my most recent work, and that is Madudo. I have a couple of copies right here. This is Madudo, and let's see if you can see that. So this is the first children's book that I wrote, and this is the story of a 10-year-old girl, a 10-year-old African American girl named Madison, who is actually navigating the journey of her transition the transition of her Uncle Pete, who used to be her favorite Auntie Mary. And so when I transitioned in 2018, I started my mental health therapy in 2017. One of the biggest things that came up for me in therapy was, how am I going to have this conversation with my nieces and nephews and baby cousins? Like, I'm a family guy. I absolutely love my family. And honestly, that was one of the reasons that I didn't transition before I did, because I had a fear. I hadn't surrendered. I had a fear of losing the relationship with them. And so I did what most people do. I looked on the internet and I said, how to have a conversation about transitioning with kids. And there was nothing. Like, well, let me say, there was nothing with African American faces on it. And so there were a few things that were general, right? But there was nothing with someone who looked like myself or someone who looked like my nieces and nephews to sit down and have a conversation with them, or a tool to give their parents to have a conversation with them. And so God said to create the resource. There is no resource. So create the resource. So that is what I did. I created Madudo. Well, not just I, a team of us created Madudo. And when I tell you, it has really blessed me so much. I have found my niche, if you will. I never aspired to write children's books. I didn't even go to school for English. I think I probably got a C, maybe a D in English in high school. And so that is Madudo. She's available on Amazon. And the most recent book just came out this year that I haven't really been promoting yet. But it's called Madudo, the New Kid. You see, we got the mask. They have the mask on, so we've incorporated the pandemic in there. And that is a book about a non-binary kid who we don't say what their gender is. And the purpose of that book is to help children and adults just welcome and love and accept a person for who they are, whether you can see with your physical eyes, whether they're a boy or a girl or non-binary in this case, in this book. And it's, even though I haven't started advertising it yet, it's been received, both of them have been received very well. And fingers crossed, I have one of my literary agent is working on a pitch deck to get this animated. So hopefully you'll be seeing Madoodle on the big, no, you'll be seeing Madoodle on the big screen and on the internet and television really soon.
Congratulations.
That is great. That's it's amazing, how we can sit there and think about something, like you said, just looking it up. Thank you to Google, but
Yes.
and realizing what's not there that we think
Yes.
is. Yeah.
Yes. If it's not on Google, then you know there is a need for it.
Yeah,
That's our
exactly.
measure.
Yeah. So how can our listeners reach out to you?
So I am on all social media platforms as Dr. Elijah Nicholas. IG is the quickest way. Like if you want to reach out to me directly, you can find me at Dr. Elijah Nicholas. You can also find Madoodle at _ Madoodle on Instagram. And I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn at Dr. Elijah Nicholas. The only one that's different is Twitter. It's Dr. Eli Nicholas, because I guess there's another Dr. Elijah Nicholas out.
And are your books available on Amazon?
Yes, my books are available on Amazon, and the first Madoodle is also available at Walmart now. So you can shop at Walmart and pick it up, and at Amazon. And you can reach out to me also. My website is ElijahNicholas.com, and you can learn more about me. You can, if anybody wants to set up an appointment or have me speak or talk about my books or whatever, you can find me at ElijahNicholas.com.
Perfect.
Wow.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for your message and for sharing your story. Very,
Yes.
very interesting.
Thank you all so much for having me. Like, I really appreciate what you're doing. Just the name of your podcast alone, Lift Your Story, like that I love lifting one another up. I love lifting people up. And so thank you all for lifting us up and for having a platform where you share the stories and testimonies really of everyone. So thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it was our pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Bye.